do. We're going to have Minister Vaz first, and then we'll have Minister Johnson Smith, and then we will have Minister Chuck rounding out the ministers this morning. And so, Minister Vaz, please welcome him.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everybody, colleague ministers, permanent secretaries, heads of agencies, and all others. This morning I have a few updates. First and foremost would be the status of the restoration, Melissa restoration with JPS. I'll also give a quick update on the electricity license negotiation, the United Oil and Gas update, and also National Energy Poverty Reduction Program. And last but not least, I'll give something on the impact of the US-Israel-Iran conflict on local fuel prices. But let's start with the big one. Today I'll report on key milestones in Jamaica's recovery and energy advancement following Hurricane Melissa, and on strategic initiatives shaping the nation's electricity and energy future. These updates reflect a government that acts decisively, honors commitments, and prioritizes resilience, safety, and long-term development. As of February 28th, 124 days after Hurricane Melissa, 99% of JPS customers now have electricity. Approximately 681,000 of 690,000 customers are back in supply. At the end of February, a clear public commitment was made that fewer than 10,000 customers would remain without electricity. That pledge was met, and as I said before, as of March 1st, 9,135 customers remain without electricity. So let's put that in perspective. The government made a commitment in December that we would loan JPS $150 million on the basis that we would have full restoration, save and accept circumstances out of their control as of February 2026. Commitment made, commitment kept. As of right now, 8,653 customers, as of today, are still without power. JPS will continue to deploy crews while working 24/7 for the month of March and April to complete restoration. These customers are primarily in Westmoreland, St. Elizabeth, which sustained catastrophic damage where Melissa made landfall. An additional 5,000 customers are expected to be restored in the month of March. So that would mean that as of the end of March, 3,600 customers will remain without electricity. Those will go into April, and we are looking to close off in April. So, as of right now, Westmoreland is at 83% restoration. 5,568 customers in Westmoreland remain without electricity. St. Elizabeth is at 92% with 3,416 customers, and St. James at 99% with 151 customers. Let me remind Jamaica that in December when I spoke at this post cab, Westmoreland was at 18%. Memories are short, so we have to remind people. They are now at 83%, which would have meant half of December, January and February. 10 weeks. St. Elizabeth was at about 40-something%. They are now at 92% with 3,416. So I want to put it in perspective that the commitment, first of all, the decision that the government took for that $150 million is the best decision taken because it has now made restoration at 99%. And let me remind Jamaica that it wasn't me who said it, but the president of the JPS that said without the intervention of the government, we would be looking at last quarter of 2026 for restoration. Last quarter meaning September 2026 to December 2026. I just ask you to imagine what would happen to Jamaica. Productivity, economic growth, social, anything you can think of without restoration as a number one priority. So for St. Elizabeth, yes, we have it. We have the districts that are aimed for March that we will make sure is widely circulated. St. Elizabeth, 36 districts and communities will get back light in the month of March. And for Westmoreland, the same 36 will get back light in the month of March. St. James, Huntley and Kemshot, and Hanover Milestown. So the emphasis really is on St. Elizabeth and Westmoreland. And as I said before, we are not stopping until everybody is restored. So those areas that have not been restored as of February 28th will get priority attention, many of them in March, and the outside will be April. So once again, let me congratulate the JPS led by President Hugh Grant, and of course, the entire government apparatus that has worked tirelessly to get this result, which I would say is one of the best pieces of news that could be stated for a government to have made a commitment and lived up to that commitment to the T, 99% restoration by the targeted date of February 28th, 2026. Let's move on to the All-Island electricity license, but let me remind you that Melissa would have caused us to have a request for an extension of the existing license for up to 10 years. That is what was requested and supported by the multilaterals. The commitment that the government made that a new license would be in place for 2027 was a commitment that we could not break. Therefore, we were able to separate the two issues, the damage from Melissa, and deal with that through a loan, and the continued negotiations for a new license for better terms and conditions and better rates for the Jamaican public with a new license. Cabinet was updated on progress towards All-Island electricity license, which is scheduled to take effect in 2027. In November 2025, the ministry entered a new contract with Francis Maud Associates representing phase 1 of a structured 3-phase reform process to establish a modernized license framework. The initial phase runs through April 26 and focuses on defining the key commercial, regulatory, and legal foundations for the new regime. The work is being carried out by a dedicated electricity license negotiation team comprises of officers of the Ministry of Energy, Transport and Telecommunications, Attorney General's Chambers, Ministry of Finance and Public Service, the OUR, as well as energy specialists from the private sector and academia. The team is chaired by former Permanent Secretary Carol Palmer and meets weekly to ensure coordinated and timely progress. A draft heads of terms has already been prepared and submitted for Cabinet's consideration, which was done on Monday and approved, Monday meaning 2 days ago, outlining the principal features of the proposed license framework following Cabinet's approval. The detailed legal structure will be finalized and formal negotiations will commence with the Jamaica Public Service. Beginning in April 26, FMA's broader work stream schedule will advance into a 16-month sectoral framework development and implementation phase. This includes the preparation of a new Electricity Act, amendments to the OUR Act, strengthened enforcement provisions, establishment of the LCCCJ renegotiation of power purchase agreements, updated policies to address system losses and grid resilience, and publication of a draft white paper setting out the full scope of reforms. The process also provides structured pathways depending on the outcome of negotiation, including new licensing arrangements for transmission, distribution, and generation, and transition support to government, valuation mechanisms where required, and if necessary, competitive engagement of alternative operators. What does that mean? We're not putting all our eggs in one basket. If the negotiations with JPS do not prove fruitful, we have alternatives that we can go to make sure that come 2027, a new license is in place for whoever it is. This approach is deliberate, structured, and reform-driven. It assures by 2027, Jamaica will have in place a modern, transparent, and resilient electricity license framework that protects consumers, strengthens regulation, and attracts investment and aligns the sector with the country's long-term development objectives. So again, work is continuing, and as we did with the Melissa restoration, we will do with the license negotiation and have a new license in the timeline for next year, July 2027, to make sure that we tick that box. Very quickly, the oil and gas survey update. Most significant update today concerns Jamaica's offshore oil and gas exploration efforts. The surface geochemical survey conducted by United Oil and Gas was successfully completed on February 28, 2026. As a research vessel returned to Kingston Harbor, the survey lasted 34 days, operating on 24-hour shifts with no reported safety incidents, no environmental accidents, and no conflicts with fisherfolk. During the mission, 1,189 line kilometers of multi-beam echo sounder data was collected to map the seafloor. Heat flow probe data was gathered to analyze temperature gradients. Most importantly, piston cores were taken from 42 locations across the Walton and Morant basins for direct testings of oil and gas presence. These cores have now been offloaded and are en route to a lab in the United States for detailed analysis. Results are expected within 2 to 3 months. This is not simply a technical exercise, it is a meaningful step towards understanding the geological potential of offshore Jamaica. The data collected is state-of-the-art and it will inform evidence-based decision-making about the country's energy future. I want to commend the technical teams, marine crews, regulators, and support personnel who ensure the safe and successful completion of this mission. As we await the lab results, the government remains committed to a responsible science-led approach. Exploration does not mean exploitation without safeguards. It means gathering facts, analyzing data, and making informed decisions in the best interests of Jamaica. So once again, I caution everybody to be patient and calm and to listen to the government on this very sensitive matter. 3 months, 2 to 3 months before we hear anything positive or negative, and therefore we don't expect to have anything, rumors circulating about the discovery of oil or gas. When I tell you that is so, then it is so. Until such time, we just hope and pray. Okay, in the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa, the government committed $852 million Jamaican dollars through the National Energy Poverty Reduction Program to restore electricity and safety to affected households. Between the 10th of February and the 3rd of March, the National Energy Poverty Reduction Program recorded significant gains across multiple parishes. Clarendon moved from 50% to 95% completion for 300 house wiring interventions. Manchester advanced from 35% to 55%, while St. Elizabeth improved from 40% to 55% in Black River and adjoining communities. St. Mary improved from 65% to 85%, and importantly, 250 rewiring and recertification works were done in Catherine Hall and West Green St. James, which have now reached 100% completion. We all know that those two areas were the hardest hit in the hurricane, especially in the low-lying areas of Montego Bay, St. James. The program has also expanded in scope. An additional 200 house wiring interventions were added to Santa Cruz and Balaclava, St. Elizabeth, bringing the total households under active implementation from 2,742 to 2,942. Works in St. Anne and Westmoreland remain in the early stages, with site preparation mobilization now underway and targeted completion dates extending into March and April. Financially, the expansion has increased the house wiring allocation from 1,200 to 1,400 households, moving that component from 180 million to 210. The minor repairs and certification allocation remains 462 million, and GR certification support continues at 180 million. So overall, the active program envelope has grown from 822.2 to 852.2 million, reflecting the scale-up in beneficiary coverage. Overall, nearly 3,000 households are actively being restored, with all projects on track to meet scheduled targets, demonstrating tangible, measurable results in government's commitment to the post-hurricane recovery and energy access. Let me repeat again. These are grants. These are grants given to those who are affected who would not normally be able to afford the rewiring and recertification, which can go as much as $180,000 to $200,000 per household. $852 million is being granted to those badly affected persons who would not be able to get back light, even when light comes to their community, because they would not be in a position to have their house in a state of readiness. Once again, showing joined-up government between all of the different aspects of the recovery and a caring government. Last but not least, it would be remiss of me not to mention the present crisis in the Middle East and its potential effects on Jamaica's fuel economy, international oil prices, which have increased in recent weeks due to the geopolitical tensions in the Middle East. However, it is important to understand that crude oil and finished petroleum products are traded in separate markets, and movement in crude oil prices do not automatically or proportionally translate into local pump prices. The pricing mechanism used by Petrojam also helps to mitigate full exposure to sudden price shocks. The extent of any local impact will depend on how sustained these international price movements are. Petrojam continues to monitor closely changes in the U.S. Gulf Coast reference for finished petroleum products, which serve as a primary pricing benchmark for the region and determines Petrojam's ex-refinery prices. Based on early analysis of the USGC reference, fuel prices have been trending upward in an apparent response to the current US-Iran tensions. We will continue to assess developments carefully and keep the public advised and informed. Jamaica's recovery and energy progress is a testament to what can be achieved when commitment meets coordinated action. From restoring electricity and modernizing our networks to advancing offshore energy research, the government remains steadfast in delivering results for the people while we are building a more resilient, connected, and future-ready Jamaica. I thank you very much, and I think that today is a very good day for the people of Jamaica and Jamaica, the land we love. God bless Jamaica.